I'm not sure I like this. I said I wouldn't listen to this podcast, and then I was walking yesterday and I just went,
I'm gonna do it.
And I have a lot of thoughts. So buckle up.
I'm Meghan, and this is Confessions of a Female Founder.
After almost 3 entire years since Archetypes debuted on Spotify, the first episode of Meghan's second podcast, Confessions of an Out-of-Touch Elite, or 1%er, dropped on April 8th.
And the person that I thought was perfect to talk to about this, well, she's one of my closest friends. She's the founder of the dating app Bumble. It's Whitney Wolfe Herd.
Whitney is the daughter of a wealthy property developer called Michael Wolfe. I'm mentioning this for a reason. She went to Southern Methodist University, a private university, where she majored in international studies and was a member of the Kappa Kappa Gamma sorority. And yes, I'm still talking about Whitney here, not Meghan. But you can see why they became such dear close friends. According to her, she started her first business at the age of 19 or 20 when she was still at college, designing tote bags made out of bamboo, which were pictured on celebrities such as stylist Rachel Zoe and Nicole Richie, which, by the way, never comes up in this podcast, which is really strange, seeing as Meghan asked Whitney about her origin story. Fast forward to 2013, and Whitney is in a relationship with direct supervisor and fellow co-founder of Tinder, Justin Mateen. And they stopped swiping right for each other at the end of that year. The following year, she filed a lawsuit against both co-founders, so James Mateen and Sean Rad, alleging sexual harassment and discrimination. In that lawsuit, Whitney claimed that Mateen started a threatening and abusive pattern of behavior, which included sending her, quote, a stream of horrendously sexist, racist, and otherwise inappropriate comments, emails, and text messages. She also claimed that she was stripped of her co-founder status simply because she was a girl. When she took her concerns to Sean Rad, he apparently didn't want to do anything about it and instead threatened to fire her, which prompted her to resign and filed a lawsuit. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why we do not, or should not, mix business with pleasure. The court case apparently got really nasty, which Brittany alludes to during this podcast, but they ended up settling out of court with no admission of guilt on either side for an undisclosed sum, which is normal. Out-of-court settlements are usually confidential. Reports claim Whitney pocketed $1 million plus stocks in Tinder, but again, this is all unconfirmed. While all this was going on, she met oil and gas tycoon Michael Herd of the Herd Producing Company on a skiing trip in Aspen in December of 2013, and they ended up getting married in 2017. And as I mentioned, just to get us to present day, I suppose, she founded Bumble in 2014, and in 2021, she was declared the youngest self-made billionaire after Bumble went public. So basically, the Elizabeth Holmes story minus the fraud. So the episode starts off with Meghan rambling about the stresses of starting a new business, no matter the backing and the resources that you have.
Let's be honest. Launching a business, it can be so overwhelming. Even with the best of teams, it'll keep you up at night.
Once they got all the personal stuff and all the gushing out of the way,
I want to start with where we first met.
I love that. Oh, God.
Do you remember?
When I came to your house in a disco cowboy outfit.
and at this point we're around 9.5 minutes in already, they start talking about the makings of an entrepreneur, thinking outside the box, not conforming, being creative, etc., etc.
I think it was just always in me. And it's so funny. Everyone always says, like, oh, I wonder if entrepreneurs were always entrepreneurial. And I don't think that means you had to have like sold out the lemonade stand as a 10-year-old. I think it was, how did you move through the world?
Around 11.5 minutes in, Meghan asks her about the predecessor to Bumble, an app called Merci.
Can you just talk a little bit about your original concept? which was an app called Merci.
Sorry, I know I'm nitpicking, but what's with the pronunciation, Megs? I thought you spoke French.
Merci.
This then prompts Whitney, who, I'm sorry, but her voice and her accent are like nails on a chalkboard to me. So this was really difficult to go through. But she launches into this diatribe about how the app was inspired by the bullying that she'd allegedly experienced when she took Tinder to court, or the co-founders to court.
Well, the original intention behind Bumble was actually not a dating app. It was meant to be essentially girls and women only social network where we could encourage kindness amongst women.
But more importantly, she talked about how her experiences were nothing in comparison to what Meghan Markle has to go through on a daily basis.
When I see the way that, you've been treated in the media, which is a magnitude I'll never understand, but my heart breaks for you. I'm like, it's not fair and it's brutalizing.
Well, and maybe because you understand it in whatever degree, you know how to show up for me.
Yet another opportunity for self-victimization and narcissism. She couldn't resist. It's not until we are 17 entire minutes into this podcast that we learn how Merci came about and how it evolved to Bumble.
I wanted it to be an environment of thanks and gratitude. No comments, just compliments.
I can see why she and Meghan are friends. No comments, compliments only.
Couldn't find any funding, randomly got contacted by my former business partner and investor. He kind of said, listen, my one prerequisite is that you got to figure out how to do it in dating.
Call me cynical. I just find it really difficult to believe that for someone who left Tinder on such bad terms, I struggle to believe that her intentions weren't to compete with them all along, and that she just wanted a platform for kindness and positivity. So is it really far-fetched to think that she wanted to A, capitalize off of that market, seeing how lucrative it was for Tinder, and B, get back at them by competing with them and potentially taking them down? I just don't buy the whole, it's all about self-love and kindness and compliments act. It always seems so fake, so contrived to me. It's like what we always say about Meghan, how she insists constantly that she's a good person, she's a humanitarian, and she's a feminist. If you really were all these things, your actions would speak volumes and you wouldn't have to say it constantly over and over again. Like it's this mantra they have to keep reminding themselves of because it doesn't come naturally to them. And it's okay if it doesn't come naturally to you, by the way. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with people who aren't naturally that way. But I would just prefer more openness and more honesty about what it takes to make it in the cutthroat world of business, because kindness and compliments do not make you billions.
Couldn't find any funding.
Around the 25-minute mark, which is literally halfway through the entire 50-minute episode, they are still being self-help coaches, talking about the importance of self-love and how much they love their husbands and their children.
It's all about the way we love ourselves, or we don't.
Which, okay, great, but that's coffee table talk. That's catch-up talk, not talk for a podcast that's supposed to be valuable and supposed to impart knowledge to other women tuning in who may want to start a business or who are already running one. But what does happen at this point was quite pivotal for me upon my first listen, because yes, I had to listen twice. First to digest everything, and the second time on double speed to take notes. But I hadn't researched Whitney before my first listen because I was walking and I decided to listen on a whim. And at this point I realized that she was the first youngest self-made female billionaire, which explained to me why she's a dear close friend of Meghan's. Meghan's basically a billionaire heat-seeking missile at this point. As is always the case with Meghan's content, I once again felt like I was listening in on a different species who live on a different planet, where their world and my world don't collide and likely never will. For example, after achieving this billionaire status, which, by the way, up until this point, more than half an hour into the episode, we have no idea how she did it, Whitney says something so profound, she almost makes cold-hearted Meghan Markle cry.
Our stock hit an all-time low. And I wrote a letter to myself that day and I said, today is one of the best days of my life. I said, because my other buckets of wealth are so overflowing that it just
want to cry.
doesn't matter.
What did I tell you? It's a different species. We're listening to a different species talk. Can anyone out there actually relate to this? Honestly, let me know. Maybe, again, I'm being too cynical. But from what I know, if your average female founder's business wasn't doing well and had the worst numbers of its life, whether it's worst sales, worst profits, whatever, I doubt she'd shrug it off and describe it as the best day in her life as she writes herself a self-indulgent letter because her other buckets of wealth are overflowing. Is that what happens when people make a certain amount of money? Or does it take a certain type of person to make that much money? And given the state of the world that we are currently in with the whole economic meltdown we're experiencing, it really stood out even more so as the sorest of all thumbs. Wait, is that correct? As the sorest thumb of all. You know what I'm trying to say. Around 29 minutes in, Meghan asks Whitney,
would you do it differently?
Totally. The one thing I can offer to the world is actually a blueprint of, hey, don't take this route to the top of Everest. It's not worth it.
all right, given this is a podcast about learning from successful female co-founders, or if not that, at least giving Meghan tips on how to run her own business, because we know she has an abysmal track record when it comes to that. Wouldn't you expect Whitney to tell us how she climbed Mount Everest to begin with before going on to tell us how not to do it? And mind you, she doesn't even tell us how not to do it. She just says, I tell people not to do it this way. What way? How do we know how you did it? Isn't that the point? Or do people have to Google you and spend hours of listening to your interviews and reading articles about you to learn how you did it and to perhaps not do it the same way? So once again, I had to swoop in and do the heavy lifting and do the research and try to learn about Whitney and her success story. And luckily for me, I came across this golden tip that she shared with a company that sounds a lot like BetterUp, Bloom Coaching. Set aside 5 minutes each day to reflect on and write down at least 3 things you are grateful for, focusing on your work environment, colleagues, or recent accomplishments. This practice will help you foster a positive mindset, maintain perspective during challenging times, and build resilience by recognizing the good in your professional life. So to all you negative Nancys, is that even a word? I don't know if I just made that up out there. Now you know why you're not a billionaire. In the intro, Meghan harped on about packaging.
Is there tissue paper? What about the packing peanuts, but they're biodegradable? And where does the sticker go? And hold on, what size the box is going to be? And no, that's not going to fit all the SKUs. Oh my gosh.
And she does it again 30 minutes into the episode.
Oh gosh, but that packaging, and I want the packaging to look like this, and that's not the unboxing experience I had in mind. And what do we...
I find that really funny because her obsession with packaging and the external, the aesthetic, is so on brand for her. You can tell that is literally all she ever cared about. She never once mentioned worrying about the ingredients, how to get the perfect balance, get enough sweet, getting FDA approval, making sure that allergies are adequately disclosed. None of that. It was just down to the packaging and the unboxing experience, because you can tell her mind was on the influencers whom she was going to send products to and whom she knew would film the unboxing. Now look, I ain't no successful businesswoman myself, and in fact I was kind of hoping I'd learn a few things, but you know, joke's on me. But I can't help but think that maybe if Meghan worried a little bit less about packaging and a little bit more about the quality of her products and her website functioning properly, she wouldn't be getting headlines like this. At around 35 minutes in, they broached the topic of motherhood.
The way I look at it is like, okay, I could either be doing that thing or I could be with my children. And if that thing is not going to add to the lives and the well-being of my children, like, why would I do it?
It's not high value enough.
Yeah, no, not right now.
I don't know about you, but on the planet that I currently inhabit, which is not Pluto, unfortunately, most people don't have the luxury of choosing, of deciding whether something is worth pursuing and whether it's high value enough. Because we don't have royal husbands or oil tycoon husbands and rich fathers and incredibly wealthy backgrounds to fall onto in case things go bust. And just when you thought it couldn't get worse, which is, again, very typical of Meghan Markle content, there is no rock bottom. You just keep falling down into the abyss. Meghan throws in a tangent, and she talks about how she and Whitney suffered from the same ailment after giving birth, which Whitney, whether trained or prompted or not, then uses as another opportunity to gush about how incredibly strong Meghan was throughout her pregnancies. Listen to this.
How is this woman putting on heels and going and debuting a child in this, beautiful outfit in front of the entire world?
Putting on heels. Debuting a child in a palace, wearing a beautiful outfit, as she called it. And this billionaire founder, whom we should all be seeking and getting inspiration from, was amazed. So now we have 10 minutes left. And how do Meghan Markle and Whitney Wolf decide to spend it? Perhaps they were saving the best for last. Perhaps it was a clever tactic to keep us hooked until the end.
So in 2023, you stepped down as CEO of Bumble.
Yeah.
And you're back in charge.
Oh, yeah. I just needed to find myself.
Yeah.
Nothing says 1%er living on a different planet as much as talking about taking the time to find yourself. That's what we have to do to become successful female founders of businesses. We just have to quit, step aside, take a year and a half, go on some eat, pray, love journey to find ourselves. I'm actually getting a strong sense of deja vu here. Didn't Harry say kind of the same thing a few years ago when he said, if you don't like your job and it's affecting your mental health, just quit? Like, it's that easy. Like, we could all just quit on a moment's notice and just take a sabbatical, just take a break. And that's it. That's all we got. So what did we learn here? I've learned that I cannot listen to Whitney Wolf Heard's voice. I also learned that she is just as insufferable as Meghan Markle, if not more. Planet Elite most certainly exists. And being a Nepo baby or marrying up is an integral part of immense financial success. Now, I'm not saying that you cannot build your wealth from scratch and attain billionaire status in your lifetime without having nepotism to lift you up or give you an edge. But I get the sense that that wasn't Whitney's story. And I also suspect that that's why we got such a disturbing lack of detail when it comes to her success. And that's it. That's all I came away with out of this episode. Let me know what you think in the comments so we can compare notes. But excuse me while I go get a lobotomy first.